Oh, what up? Welcome in. This is The Herd. What's that Colin says every day at this time? Welcome in. Well, I say my thing is the what up. He goes,
Oh, okay.
But they would see.
Whether you're listening from iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, in California, something like that.
You sit there every day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think he says. I think he says wherever you may be listening to this show, however you may be listening to the show, welcome in live from
Los Angeles,
sunny Los Angeles, California, along with Christine Leahy, who she is fired up. When I told her Brad Stevens was going to join us, all of a sudden she's like, "Listen, you want to say hello? Feel free. I'm taking over afterwards." Of course, she used to work for the Celtics. She has tons of inside knowledge.
Not with Brad Stevens, but I do want to ask Brad Stevens about his Miss Pac-Man addiction and whether that helped him land Gordon Hayward.
Miss Pac-Man. Have you ever played Miss Pac?
Of course I've played Miss Pac-Man.
I understand, but
do you not know I love gaming?
I know you love gaming, okay? And you actually think that E-athletes are actual athletes. I can't wait. I can't wait.
They'd be offended by you calling them E-athletes.
They what?
They would be offended by you calling them E-athletes.
Good, because they're not.
That's adding a qualifier.
They need a qualifier? They do need a qualifier. Yeah, any time to which you can eat some Cheetos while performing your activity, it is not an athletic event.
That just shows that you don't know because you can't eat Cheetos while you're playing a game. You need both hands on the remote.
I have both hands on the remote. Okay, Christine Leahy alongside. We're not gonna go too far off the path just yet. But look, there's a juxtaposition of great quarterback play and terrible quarterback play, and it happened in Florida last night. I mean, the truth is that Florida in general, but Florida football is probably the most interesting thing out of the state of Florida since the last season of the show Cops, right? Which we always felt like was focused on things happening in Florida. But before we get to Bortles and the disaster that is Jacksonville, and before we get to Tampa and where a star is on the rise with Jameis Winston, I was watching the show yesterday, Christine.
This show?
Yes, this show.
Okay.
And wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening to this show.
I
watched. Actually, I was on the show yesterday, but I was watching the show at some point yesterday, and there was something that Jay Glazer said, and it's always, or Jay Glazer interviewed Tom Brady, and something Tom Brady said, and it's always fascinating to me how, look, to the victors generally go the spoils, right? When you win, the narrative changes dramatically. I think Tom Brady, I know he's the most accomplished quarterback of all time. Look, if you asked me, when you asked, I think, people in the NFL, or you asked a lot of people who know and cover football, there'd be a healthy debate as to if you're going to play a game this Sunday, who you would most want to be your quarterback. Would it be 12? Some people would stick to Montana. I would go with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the best at playing the position I've ever seen. He's not as accomplished as Tom Brady. And if you want to simply go by rings, that's fair. You can do that. That's how you can formulate your argument. It's a strong argument. My argument would be, tell me a box to which Aaron Rodgers doesn't check. He's played well in big games. He's lost in prime. I don't want to even get into the Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the most accomplished quarterback of all time and the most accomplished quarterback currently playing in the National Football League, and he's in the conversations of the greatest to ever be a signal caller. But isn't it fascinating how we kind of we've changed? We remember things differently because of the fourth quarter, and I guess rightfully so, right? One of my issues with Colin's take on LeBron James and about how he shouldn't be accountable for the NBA Finals is we throw out the stats, we throw out the numbers, and we're like, well, hey, who was better in the fourth quarter? Well, that's not really important. Yes, it is. That's always been what's important. Only now for LeBron, it's not important. So, look, if you want to say that Tom Brady's been clutch, he has. He didn't make the interception against the Seahawks, although he did lead his team on a touchdown drive the possession before. Tom Brady did lead his team on the greatest comeback we've ever seen in the biggest sporting event in American sports last year, coming back from 28-3 to win the Super Bowl. We did see that. That did happen. He is responsible for that. But he said this to Jay Glazer, and I kind of chuckled. Take a listen.
I feel like I've worked hard to get to this point. So going into my 18th year, I've learned a lot. I've had the experiences, played the defense, played in the big games. and I still feel like I can perform at a really high level. So I think now this is the time to really start having fun. I mean, every time I go on the field, I feel like, all right, well, I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know where to go with the ball. And, football is in some ways easier now for me than it ever was because, it's just, I've been doing it longer. I've had the experience, and, hopefully that experience can pay off.
In fairness, he's right. The more you do something, the easier it is. I mean, I can tell you, first time I ever sat in for Colin at the other place, the first time I sat in here, there's nerves, right? Like you're big stage, I'm working with you, working with all of the guys, like you want to perform. And the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable. And you multiply that tenfold when you've been playing the position as well as he's been playing position in the NFL and won 5 Super Bowls and competed in all of the other Super Bowls as well. And you start to go like, of course, he's seen seemingly everything. But he acts like it's easier than it used to be. The game is simpler. And look, I watched the Super Bowl. First half, he was bad. He did throw a pick 6. And while we want to remember only that they came from behind, if the Atlanta Falcons had just taken a knee, if they had just run the football into the ground and not fumbled it, made one field goal up 28-3 after Julio Jones's catch, this narrative changes dramatically. Dramatically. I'm not talking about the is he the greatest of all time narrative. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, think about how we view the New England Patriots camp and Tom Brady's longevity. Now you have people saying like, look, he could go forever. 40 years old, right? He only threw 2 interceptions all season last year. He played in 12 games. They were 11-1 on the season. Why couldn't he continue to play? Because he's playing at a ridiculously high level. When the truth is, as accomplished as he is, as experienced as he is, he did not look good at all. He was rattled. And I will grant you, they didn't have Rob Gronkowski, who's his best target. He's one of the elite players in the NFL. He didn't have him for that entire game, and that would cause any quarterback to be a little bit scattered with where they wanted to go with the football. But if you want to tell me that I've seen everything, I'm better now, it's easier than it used to be, well, why wasn't it easy against the Atlanta Falcons? Or if you even go back to when they played the Houston Texans, like if the Texans had any sort of quarterback play, that would have been a hell of a game. He threw 2 picks against the Texans. He was, by his own estimation, bad. And so let's not misremember that Tom Brady in the first half of the Super Bowl had a 61.5 rating, threw for 184 yards. They did have 10 first downs, but he wasn't great. And by probably his own evaluation, wasn't even really good. They were out of rhythm, out of sorts, and it took a drive at the end of the third quarter and a lot of help by the Atlanta Falcons and some help by the defense in order to give them more opportunities. And he was incredible in the fourth quarter. 10 first downs in the fourth quarter alone. But the point is, how we completely change our evaluation of where he is in his career, his longevity, based simply upon what happened in that fourth quarter. When if we look at the previous 7 quarters, you might actually have a lot more concerns about Brady's present day, Brady's future, and how quickly Jimmy Garoppolo becomes the next quarterback of the Patriots. And the one guy who doesn't get caught up in that just happens to be his head coach in Bill Belichick. Belichick knows exactly what he's doing. You're not fooling him by saying all the right things. You're not fooling him by what you do in the fourth quarter. What you do in quarters 1 through 3 leaves anybody to have pause because he's never been mobile. He's even more immobile. And if you can get to Tom Brady with 4, you can make him look like a fairly average quarterback in comparison to how great he looks when he has time, when he's on his spot. And look, Tom Brady obviously was the most misevaluated quarterback in the NFL draft in recent memory, 6th-round draft pick. And you know the reason why? The reason why he was misevaluated is the same reason why Blake Bortles was misevaluated. Christine, when you think of Tom Brady from the NFL draft, what do you think of?
Certainly not what he is now.
Don't you think of that famous picture of him at the draft combine in his skibbies with like no muscle tone at all, where you're like, dude, did they have a weight room at Michigan? Do you remember that picture?
Yeah.
Right. See, the problem, Blake Bortles was awful last night. We all kind of agree. I mean, I felt bad for him because It was a public undressing. It's one thing to get to be undressed by your teammates, by a defense, by a coaching staff, by an announcer in a private setting to happen on what was deemed Monday Night Football on a Thursday night. I think it was all but official. He's going to be done as the Jaguars quarterback. Take a listen to John Gruden, who's been known to never say anything negative about anyone, talking about Bortles last night.
Bortles, he's been hit a lot. Sacked 140 times in 3 years, more than any man in football, and his mechanics have eroded. Last year, he dropped the ball way below his waist. A long release. Defenders got a great read on him. This kid is 25 years old. There's athleticism and talent, but right now he is struggling with his mechanics, and maybe you'd let him take a break and let him watch Henne for a little bit while he sorts it out. That's what it appears to me.
When Chad Henne is the answer, what was exactly the question, right? It wasn't like Chad Henne came in and lit the world on fire, although he did have a couple of drops on some good throws when he first checked into the game. But when John Gruden, who's never said anything bad about anybody, says, hey, maybe this guy should just go take a breather and watch on the sidelines, it tells you all you need to know. And look, evaluating a quarterback, you know what they say, it's an inexact science. Okay? That actually should be a front to science, right? Because science, a scientific fact, is 97%, whereas this is more of a crapshoot. You look back at the 2014 draft, and Bortles went number 3 overall. Johnny Manziel went 22 overall, whereas Derek Carr, who by all accounts is a star, is at like 36. And Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think many people believe has a chance to be at least a solid starting quarterback at 62. We've only seen Garoppolo for a game and a half. Remember, Tar started 2 games, didn't finish the second game. But if you had to bet on, in order of who's going to be a starting quarterback in the future in the NFL, Carr 1, Garoppolo 2, and after that, boy, I don't know. Teddy Bridgewater obviously massively limited by that catastrophic knee injury of last year. And then Bortles' days appear to be numbered. Remember, he has a $19 million option that is only guaranteed if he gets hurt. In other words, the Jaguars are going to wrap him in in bubble wrap, and make sure he doesn't play it down, because the last thing they want to do is be on the hook to pay that dude $19 million. Right? Every time you see Blake Bortles under center, there's almost like a sigh from the crowd and even from his teammates. And the flaw in the evaluation is the same flaw in the evaluation of Tom Brady. Because we look at the neck down. We just do. Or we look at outside factors. Johnny Manziel had the it factor, right? He had the it factor. He was magical with his plays. He made people pay attention. Blake Bortles checked every box with body, with arm strength, with foot speed. You even heard John Gruden. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of tangible talent. Arm strength, foot speed, power. But it's neck up. And that's what allowed Brady to evolve into the most accomplished quarterback of all time. And that's what's had Blake Bortles devolve. And look, the Jaguars did him no favors. He's had a different offensive coordinator every year. That doesn't help. He's had problems at left tackle. That doesn't help. They played him in his first year, even though he was supposed to be redshirted in his first year. That didn't help. But they misevaluated. And it cost one coaching staff their jobs, and it's going to cost them their season if they don't admit failure at this point in time. Quarterback is a top-down evaluation, unlike any other position in sports. All the talk right now in the NBA is about LeBron James. Will LeBron stay in Cleveland? Was LeBron subtweeting people? Why is LeBron not getting along with Kyrie? Did LeBron really sit down with Kyrie Irving? But isn't the bigger story in the NBA, or the more likely to be decided sooner story in the NBA, staring us right in the eyes? I'll tell you what that is, along with Christine Leahy. I'm Doug Gottlieb. That's next in The Herd. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. Happy Friday to you here in The Herd. Brad Stevens, head coach of the Boston Celtics, who landed his college player, Gordon Hayward, as a free agent this offseason. He'll join us upcoming in 10 minutes on the show, and Christine Leahy will pepper him with questions about Miss Pac-Man, because that is what America wants to know from Brad Stevens.
Have you ever played Miss Pac-Man?
Yeah, man. My point I was trying to get to before we diverted into some esports argument was you're not really old enough to understand the whole Miss Pac-Man video game thing, because you didn't grow up in the arcade era. Like, you didn't ride your bike down the arcade, and there was a bunch of bigger kids there, and you'd have to put your quarter up on the machine and wait your turn, and then you just had to keep winning to keep playing.
I didn't
No
play.
way.
Really?
You're not old enough. You grew up where everybody had your own personal PlayStation.
No, definitely not true. You know where I'm going?
You grew up going to an arcade.
Yeah, I was born in the 80s. And you know what I'm doing tomorrow night?
Huh?
Do you know what I'm doing tomorrow night?
You're born in '86, right? So that means you're a child of the '90s.
Whatever.
Everybody
the
had
claw game
everybody
was my
had
favorite.
a Nintendo.
I always won those stuffed toys. Do you know what I'm doing tomorrow night?
No.
I'm going to an arcade.
Nice.
So
well, like Dave and Buster's, like adult arcade. Like there was this is part of the problem with America's society. We always talk about participation trophies, right? Like once we got our personal gaming system, once we got our Nintendos, like you could get if you knew how to play Zelda, you could play forever, or Super Mario Brothers, you get the 99 lives, right? Whereas back in my day, back in the old days, you put a quarter on the machine, you had to wait your turn, and when you got in, and when you died, it was done. You had to wait again in line.
I've been there, done that. Mm-hmm.
Born in 86 means you grew up like you were 10, 12 in 96, 98. You weren't going to arcades. I call BS on that one, Christine Leahy.
I call BS on that one. Photo evidence, so
I want to see the photo evidence. You have it on your phone. Show it to us. All right. I know you're going to talk about LeBron in the news. Everyone's talking about LeBron and the assumption that LeBron is going to play his last year in Cleveland. Matter of fact, he just tweeted out a photo of him in his new Cavs jersey. Of course, he's at the Nike Skills Academy this week, which is in Thousand Oaks, California, and he's rocking the new. Remember, Nike makes the uniforms this year, and so he's rocking the new Cavs uniforms in the picture. But it feels like that's a story that, though we're going to follow it and track it, we won't have confirmation or affirmation of our thoughts until next offseason. Right? Like, it's not until we expect the Cavs to be in the finals. There is the where Kyrie will go. Will he be traded? If so, where is he traded to? Like, but the LeBron part, does LeBron end up in LA with the Lakers after tweeting out that he's coming home for pickup games, after tweeting out to Magic Johnson, with Magic and Rob Pelinka openly opining to Rich Paul, but what an incredible agent he is. Like, that's coming up. But why aren't we talking about the fact Russell Westbrook hasn't signed his contract extension? Like, Russell Westbrook has, in his person or in his agent's person, a contract extension on his desk that can be signed and must be signed before mid-October. 5 years, $217 million. Do the math. It's about 46, I think, in change. 46 per year. And there's no contract negotiation. There's no like language in it that has to be changed. Nothing can, or will be changed. And the Thunder, God bless them, they've already shown their hand. They're like, look, we're going to move heaven and earth. Matter of fact, we're going to go get Paul George for you. That's how important you are to us. Paul George, who is a pending free agent. And so anybody who says like, well, Russell has to see what it's like with Paul George. Oklahoma City's telling him, like, look, we'll do whatever it takes to keep you here. We'll go get Paul George. And if Paul George doesn't resign, we'll go get somebody else. We'll do it because you're our guy. We love you. Here's that contract. And he hasn't signed it. Why hasn't he signed it?
Because they've already let go. They've proven that they won't always do what they need to win a championship. Yes, they got Paul George in a trade. That doesn't mean he'll stay. But before that, he also lost a lot of his superstar teammates. They wouldn't pay for him.
The question now is, why hasn't he signed it? And the only possible logical reason is he ain't gonna sign it. Right? That he is just as much on the market for next year. I mean, look, he's from LA. His favorite player is Kobe. They've said we got 2 spots. We got 2 supermax. So we got 2 max spots for free agents. It doesn't mean it's 100% lock sure that he's going to the Lakers. But like, if somebody says, hey, Christine, you want to sign a 5-year extension for the most money we can possibly pay you, and you're happy and you're going to content, don't you sign it?
Maybe he doesn't know if he's happy and will contend.
Agreed. And if you don't know if you're happy and content when you've been in one
I thought
place,
you said contend.
content, like
Contend for a championship.
okay, but if you don't know now, then you do know, right? It's like I said this yesterday to Colin. It's like if somebody asks you when you've been dating somebody for a year, do you know? If you don't know, then you absolutely know. You just don't want to say that you know. You know?
Is that true?
Yeah, it's kind of true. It is kind of true. How long you guys been dating?
Oh, gosh. A year and a half.
And do you know?
That's not a discussion that we have on the radio.
Let's get to Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
You're happy with yourself over there, aren't you?
I am very, very happy with myself.
Well, LeBron James and Kyrie Irving were both in Miami over recent days, and there are conflicting reports now over whether they met, if they talked, if they didn't meet, if it was on purpose or not. I will just say this. When you go to Miami, there are a few places that you always go. There's like 2 or 3 clubs. You always go to Prime 112, so the chances of them running into each other at the same place are pretty high.
Wait. Miami's a beautiful city with magnificent restaurants and a whole bunch of clubs.
Great, but
you mean to tell me
still...
there's like one place you can get a steak in the town?
That is not at all what I said, but there are those places that you always go. Like, you go to Miami, you go to Prime 112. You know, there's like the clubs that you always go to when you're in Miami. So the chances of them running into each other at one of those places are pretty high.
I love that people think that when Kyrie and LeBron see each other, now that it's out that Kyrie wants to be traded, like they're supposed to be the Socs and the Greasers from the Outsiders. Like they're going to fight every time there's a fight.
Right. No, the way that I imagine this going down, if they, by the way, were in the same place, they're not just going to not say hello to each other. It's like, hey, man, what's up? I'm good. You good? Yeah, we're good. All right, cool. Have a good night. That's how it went.
Hit me up sometime. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like we're not fighting.
Where are you going later?
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
It's ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
No question. It's a lot like when I would guess, when you and your boyfriend eventually break up because you just told us that you didn't know.
I did not say
right?
that.
And you guys see each other out, you're going to be more than cordial because you did share a year and a half together.
Isn't that true? If you know you're engaged.
Huh?
If you know, then why aren't you engaged?
I don't know.
Then
you know before you're engaged. It's like if you get down on your knee and you ask her and there's even a thought that she might say no, you should not have gotten down on your knee.
That's true. And don't ever propose at a game. I will just say that always.
I wouldn't do blanket.
Unless you met at a game.
Correct. Right. Again, unless there's some sort
Connection.
of significance, or if here's the other one, if it's like over the top cheese ball, and she always said like that's the cheesiest thing ever, and you did it just to kind of be sarcastic, that's not bad.
Do you really want to start your marriage with sarcasm?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with starting your marriage with sarcasm. Like you better be able to laugh together because there's gonna be other stuff going on.
Okay. This is another report coming from Chris Sheridan. He is the guy who told us that LeBron is 100% leaving Cleveland. He's now adding to that, saying that any denials from his reps, LeBron's reps, are disingenuous, that they will and have to lie to protect LeBron's image. I tend to believe this. I really do.
There's a little confirmation bias, right? Like we want to believe it and we read it, and so there's confirming. But yes, that's generally the way things work, right?
He's so sure about this report, and he's doubling down on it.
He's doubling down.
And it's true, if LeBron were going to leave, his reps should be denying it right now, so that makes a lot of sense.
Well, it also, part of the original tweet was that their relationship is beyond repair. And I don't think, and that is valid. The question is, can you still work for somebody who, if you have no relationship with them?
Probably not.
Probably not. Do we know definitely not? Chris Sheridan says definitely not. What happens if they win another championship? What happens if they come close and they don't there are some things that could be decided, but I tend to agree. Look, the Lakers think, they don't know, they think they're getting him. They think they're getting him. All signs point to it, but
it does.
It's still 9 or 10 months away.
It is, but when I see, I don't know if you read into this, but I sure did, when LeBron tweeted about I'll come up when I'm home in LA.
Yep.
I read into that.
Yeah, no, he's social media conscious, and all of a sudden, he's like, oh, did I say home? My bad. No.
If there's one word that means more than anything to LeBron, it's home. I'm coming home.
That's
so he knows what that means. And finally, Kevin Durant, he's spoken a couple times about this whole situation that's going on in Cleveland. And this time he said that what's going on there is, quote, just a regular NBA problem. And I completely agree with him. It is. How many times do we hear, but it's just a small news story because it's not someone like LeBron that such and such is not happy with his team. These guys don't like playing with each other. This guy wants to be traded. That happens all the time. But because it's LeBron, it's a huge, huge story.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a huge story that Kevin Durant said that he's not going to the White House. Didn't we already hear that right after the NBA Finals? My suggestion is that they send Matt Barnes, just only Matt Barnes as a representative. And like, look, we're going to send Matt Barnes. He's going to sit down. Crazy's going to meet crazy. And they're going to hash things out. Like, I think that would be fantastic. I really do.
But part of me, I get that. But I think there's a value to conversation. And
so you would go?
Yeah,
I would too. Actually, I actually would go, and because I agree with you.
Because avoiding, and listen, I respect whatever anyone wants to do, but I think more can be done by having a conversation than not.
You're never going to have the chance to have a legit conversation with the President of the United States. One, if you don't go to the White House. Two, if you take that trip, you're going to be in direct contact, and you could even KD or Steph Curry could leverage that to look. I want to sit down. I want to be heard, or I'm not going.
I heard that my favorite gamer is on the phone though right now, so we have to speak to him.
That's Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
I would not consider him a gamer.
Yep,
Somebody like
just
Miss Pac-Man does not make you a gamer.
Like gamer first, coach second.
Brad Stevens joins us here in the Herd. He's the head coach of the Boston Celtics. You have an infatuation with Miss Pac-Man. Those of us who grew up childhoods of the '80s. You're also from the Midwest, and from Indiana, so that means you like John Mellencamp as well. We'll put you in that box. Do you consider yourself a gamer because you like Miss Pac-Man?
No, I consider myself not technologically advanced, and so it's actually funny because obviously I'm not able to play it every day or every game day, but there's if you've got a couple of minutes and I want to take my mind off of the film I'm watching or just kind of get away. I said yesterday, it's kind of my version of mindfulness, I guess. I get there and I just sit down. We've got that old pizza parlor machine in our basement.
Oh, where you can sit across from each other and it turns around?
And you can sit across from each other, and then you've got all the different 80s Atari games that are all on there. And, so my 8-year-old and 11-year-old are two of the few, I guess, that get into Frogger and Pac-Man and Galaga and all those high-level gaming games. There's probably an esports division being created right now for those.
Did this not help you in recruiting Gordon Hayward?
No, I would guess that Gordon has no idea, nor would I embarrass myself by talking about because I really don't know much about the gaming industry. Obviously, pay attention to it and have heard presentations on it, and obviously the NBA is dabbling in some of the esports stuff. But I think no, I haven't done it. It's probably been a little bit overblown, but I think that's okay. It's good to maybe do an advertisement for something that was pretty cool back in the 80s. And as I've said here, like when you go to a Red Sox game or a Celtics game or a Patriots game, you'd be amazed at how much 80s music is blaring through the microphones. So I just bring out the video game a couple hours earlier, I guess.
Brad Stevens joining us, head coach of the Celtics. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin, the Herd on Fox Sports Radio, on Fox Sports 1, on the iHeart app. Okay, so let's go back. You had this incredible run in the playoffs, especially considering you lose your first two games. Isaiah loses his sister. There's all that emotion. You win the next four to beat the Celtics, and we know about the run. The season's over. What was your honest level of confidence that Gordon Hayward would join you as a free agent?
No clue. We had no clue. And I talked to him the night at midnight of July 1st and got a chance then to sit down with him, with Al, Isaiah, members of our coaching staff, front office. We had our guys that were there for Summer League were still there. They left a couple hours earlier, so we met some of our younger players like Jalen and Jason, and then we put our best foot forward. But I had no clue, and after he left, obviously, he went and met with Utah, and I know how much, he struggled with that decision, and I did not hear from him until right after he put out the Players Tribune piece. I talked to him a little bit after he left Boston, but not that day that he put out the Players Tribune piece, and so I actually was starting to read it when he called.
He in the Players Tribune piece, look, he thanked Utah. He went through all the different people in Utah who helped him along the way, and the change, the kind of metamorphosis from boy to man after leaving Butler and becoming a professional basketball player. But in it, he said, like, look, basically the reason I'm doing this is because of you, Brad, is because of his trust in you. And part of it was, he said that you would have been okay had he decided to go to Miami, to go to Utah, or whatever he decided. You said you would support because of your friendship and your belief in him as a person. There had to be a psychology in that, right? You had to, because of your time spent together at Butler, you had to understand that these were the buttons to push to get him, right?
I didn't really look at it. I don't think you really look at it that way. And he had three great options, and he had one, that was going to be really hard to leave because of, Utah is a great organization. They've done a great job. Snyder's, a terrific coach, a guy that I learn a lot from just watching. And, I think that ultimately there were probably a lot of factors, and I don't want to answer for Gordon what the main factors were. But I think that you can't discount when anybody chooses to come here, just what this tradition, what this, what sports in this city means. And, obviously, we're in better shape than we were 3 years ago with regarding to recruiting potential free agents, whoever that may be. But, because our guys that have been here have really put their best foot forward to try to give us a chance to compete as long as we can. And I thought last year we had a really good year, but we won a ton of close games, and we were probably, as close to, the 15th to 20th teams in the league as we were to being playing as some of the last four. So we've got to continue to improve. We have to continue to get better. And but I don't think you can discount, and certainly I think one of the biggest factors is just the opportunity to play in Boston. I think I could relate to that a little bit, not from a playing standpoint, but, I'm a kid that lived in the Midwest for 33 years. Boston, I had not been here very often, so I could relate to how hard it was to move, but also how special it is to coach or play here.
Brad Stevens, our guest here in the Herd on Fox Sports Radio, Fox Sports 1, the iHeart app. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. Okay, so you made the trade shortly before the draft. You acquired Jason Tatum. He played exceptionally well in Summer League. You've been doing this a while. Summer League has become more hyped than 2 years ago, way more hyped than 5 years ago. It's become a thing. The ratings are even high. But how much can we apply what we saw in Summer League to the upcoming season in the NBA for a player like Jason?
I think we can apply a lot of what we saw. I'm not sure we can apply a lot of what we necessarily focus on. Obviously, just like any other time, there are a ton of highlights in those games, and those are things that people talk about. But I think the number one thing for me with Jason was seeing how quickly he would pick up what we were trying to do defensively and how impactful he could be defensively, because with his length especially. As you know, this game is all about being as versatile as you can, guarding as many positions as you can, and using your length to disrupt small guys that may have a little bit of a quickness advantage, and being smart enough to rotate and to make the right next play on that end of the floor. So I was paying a lot more attention to that. Obviously, all the 1 foot step backs and all the post moves and all that stuff gains all of the praise from the outside. But as you know too, that stuff is stuff you got to use at the end of the clock to get a really good shot. He's got a chance to be a guy that can create offense and score for a long time. And at the same time, he's got a lot to learn. He's 19. Luckily, we're in a position where, he's got guys that are older than him that he can complement while he's on the court, or that he can, learn from while he's not on the court, because, there's a lot of good players on our team that, I think will help his development process go fast.
Look, you have to give to get. In order to get Marcus Morris, you had to trade away Avery Bradley, who everybody thinks is a terrific player. He's versatile, and as you talked about defense, that's the staple of what you've built your team around, your program around, going back to Butler and here with the Celtics. And there's been some criticism of Danny's lack of desire to trade away the upcoming first-round picks to next year and not making the moves to Paul George. How lockstep are you guys in the decisions that have been made so far with the composition of the roster?
Well, I think Danny is one of the things that is funny to me is when people call him Trader Danny, right? He's really measured. He's really smart. He has got, he goes through every scenario. He's thoughtful about every decision that he makes. It's not easy to be, to have to trade away Avery. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do for all of us. He is a terrific player. He was great in our locker room. He's a great guy, and I hope the very, very best for him. He's one of the few guys, along with Kelly Olynyk, also hard to lose, that had been here the entire time that I had been here, and so. I think the bottom line is that, we're talking all the time. Front office, comes up with all the ideas or in the middle of all the conversations, and they keep me up to speed as needed. And, our owners are great about both being there for their thoughts and giving their opinions on it, but also giving Danny the latitude to do his job. And, I'd say we're very connected, and hey, that's the really good part, about being here from my own standpoint, from a professional standpoint. And as I've said before, we had vetted that pretty thoroughly. It's probably not an easy job if your ownership's thinking one way, your front office is thinking another, and your coaches are thinking a third. I think you've got to be committed to. To continually getting better. Not everything's going to go perfect, but we're totally committed.
Last thing, what's the likelihood that this is your roster heading into the first game of the season?
I'd say that's very likely. There's not a ton of moves as you look across the league, at this point. And I'm not the guy that makes those calls or anything like that, but I think when you get to the 1st of August or to the middle of August, most of your roster is set, and most of what you're going to be looking at the start of the season is set. So, as far as all my planning and what I work on a day-to-day basis, obviously you're always on your toes should anything change. But I've been focused on this roster that we have, and trying to get the most out of this next group and help put people in position to soar with their strengths.
Well, listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. I know you're headed to the airport with a little family trip. Thanks so much for talking Miss Pac-Man with us and about the Celtics. Enjoy the rest of whatever remains of your summer, and we'll catch up real soon, Brad.
All right. Thanks. See you, Doug.
That's Brad Stevens, the head coach of the Boston Celtics. Greg Jennings will join us at the top of the hour. We'll ask him, when do you know about a quarterback? When do you know? Or you just know when you know? We'll discuss that next in The Herd. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. The Herd on Fox Sports Radio, Fox Sports 1, and the iHeart app. Speaking of the iHeart app, if you missed any of Brad Stevens, who joined us moments ago, you can download, like 8 million other people, download Colin's podcast. You can also download my podcast, the Doug Gottlieb Show podcast, if you want. Christine Leahy, do you believe Brad Stevens when he said this is the team that we're going to go with? He said this is most likely the roster we will start, because there have been rumors about them being interested in Kyrie Irving.
Well, of course they're interested in Kyrie Irving. I do. I believe him.
You believe him?
I do. But also
what's true today might not be true tomorrow.
Right. As of right now, it's true. But it's really Danny Ainge's call.
See, I think a couple things here. One, there's a kid named Marvin Bagley who not only committed to Duke this week, but he reclassified, so he'll play, if the NCAA approves him, he'll play at Duke this year. He'll be the number one pick in the upcoming NBA draft. He's He's that type of generational talent that whether it was this past year, this coming year, or if it was next year, whatever, he'll be the number one pick in the draft. I think that only strengthens Danny Ainge's holding on to those 3 first-round picks for this upcoming year. And like one of the things that I think Colin has missed on is they couldn't have gotten Paul George and Gordon Hayward salary-wise without gutting their roster. They got Gordon Hayward, who they wanted. They went and got Marcus Morris, who makes them more versatile and gives them a guy who's a pro, who averaged 14 a game last year, could be a really good player. But more than anything, they still have those resources. They still have those assets that they can trade to make another big move, whether it's this year, midway through this year, or before next year's NBA draft. They're in prime position, and they have young talent. Do I believe him? I do. Do I think they would still make a trade for Kyrie Irving if it was the right ask, the right opportunity? Like, yeah, I think they'd be dumb not to. But how does it work with Isaiah Thomas? How does it work with, do they have to get rid of all the draft picks? There'd be a lot of other issues that would come with it. And I think if you're just sitting there, not in pole position, but you're just like the stock horse, right? You're just sitting there just off the lead with the Celtics, and you feel like you're getting better, and they're slowly kind of breaking apart. You understand that at some point, right before the end of the race, they may come back to you, and you may be, like we see in NASCAR, you may be drafting and then have more power at the end. Super Bowl champion Greg Jennings is going to join us upcoming next. I'm going to ask him, when do you know that a quarterback has it or that he doesn't have it? He's played with them. He would know. He joins us next in The Herd. What up? Welcome in. This is The Herd. I'm Doug Gottlieb, filling in for Colin. You're watching us on FS1, listening to us on the iHeart app or on Fox Sports Radio nationwide. Welcome in. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. Christine Leahy alongside as always. Hopefully you're getting ready for a safe, healthy, fun, one of the final weekends of summer. Some people are already back in school. Some people are not yet. Regardless, there are preseason games on the docket. We saw some last night. We'll talk with Greg Jennings about what he saw with Miami, with Jacksonville, and frankly with Tampa, which look, I'm always fascinated by colleges that win the offseason, the recruiting battles, right? And teams that win the preseason. But I'm not sure there's a team that's won more in the preseason than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? They have issues with their kicker, right? Nick Folk comes in after they cut Robert Aguayo and promptly misses a very makeable kick. You're like, oh, boy, here we go again. This is an extra point, misses an extra point. But like Hard Knocks is there, and the takeaway from Hard Knocks is, all right, I'm kind of all in on Jameis Winston. And for the record, I was kind of all in on Jameis Winston in terms of people's perception of who he might be off the football field, because of people I know, also because of, there's basically like 3 investigations. None of them came up with anything. Not that I'm okay with some of the behavior at Florida State, but in terms of who he is as a football player, my biggest concern was he had a long release, and oftentimes that would cause him to stare down a receiver in college, especially his last year at Florida State, and he forced some things in there. But having watched him back in high school, he was in the Elite 11 camp, and having listened to him talk with Gruden at the football camp and having heard people talk about him, we talked about this to start the show, Christine. Being a quarterback in the NFL is top down. The head, the decision-making on the field, seeing the field, understanding concepts, both offensive and defensive. Like, you felt like he had trained his entire life to be a quarterback and had natural-born leadership instincts. And everyone who covers him says, like, look, you go back to high school and to college and the pros, like, he owns all of those locker rooms. From the moment he walked into Tampa, that became his locker room. That's the it factor that quarterbacks have. Phil Simms, I used to work with Phil Simms at one of my previous places of employment. Phil used to always say, well, he's a quarterback. I'm like, all right, Phil, you're going to have to You have to give him a little more than he's a quarterback. He's like, he's a quarterback. You shake his hand, he looks you in the eye, and you just feel like whatever that guy says is going to happen will happen. I felt like Tampa knew right away, and the rest of us are starting to learn they got a dude. Right? Like, can you win a Super Bowl with him? I don't know. But can he put you in position to compete for the playoffs every year? Can he be a franchise quarterback? Tampa has their answer. It is yes. And as we saw Jacksonville last night, the answer appears to be no with Blake Bortles. Speaking of Blake Bortles and what we saw last night, and a guy who has played with young quarterbacks, has played with old quarterbacks, he's played with a bunch of quarterbacks. He's Greg Jennings. He joins us now in the herd, a Super Bowl champion. Last season was in Miami, of course. Previous to that, in Minnesota. Previous to that, in Green Bay. Look, I think your first year in Green Bay was Aaron Rodgers' first year, wasn't it?
No, my first year in Green Bay was Brett.
But was Aaron wasn't a rookie? Aaron didn't come in that year?
You're saying my rookie. No, he was there the year before.
Okay, so when you got there and it's Brett, and you're like, this is Brett Favre. Okay, did you know, like, how long did you know before you knew Aaron Rodgers maybe wasn't what he's become, but he was a dude?
He was overlooked by so many outside fans and media because we had Brett. So there was no reason to look beyond Brett. But I was on the practice squad. I was a starter my rookie year, and I was on the practice squad pretty much every single day with this guy, Aaron Rodgers. And he made some amazing throws, and we're competing against the ones. Charles was, when you're on the practice squad and you're the two, where you're the second string offense, basically, you're going against the number one defense every day. And the throws that he made, did he throw a lot of interceptions? Absolutely, but I think he gained so much experience in his leadership. He owned it, and it was like you knew when his opportunity came, he had been preparing himself like, I'm going to play well because I've seen a guy do it in front of me, even though he wouldn't give Brett that credit that, I took a couple things from his game. But the throws he was able to make, his mindset, his mentality was what set him apart.
So you knew right away? Did it take half a season?
No, we didn't know right away. But I knew once he took over, once Brett decided to retire, and we got into that training camp.
Which time?
Well,
I'm messing with you.
With us the first time. And so when we got into that training camp and we started to see the progression, I think that's when we all really began to believe, like, this kid is going to be special. And so once the season came, he played lights out.
Okay, so then I remember when you went to Minnesota, they had Castle and Ponder, right?
Yes.
Did you right away? You knew this is.
I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
So when I decided to go to Minnesota, I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew Christian Ponder had all the skill sets. I didn't know if he would be able to mentally be the quarterback that I needed him to be and that we needed him to be. And I think what we see in Jacksonville with the Blake Bortles is we see the same thing. He has all – if you put him in a lineup and just say, give me the guy with the best skill set, you'll probably pick Blake Bortles.
It's funny you say that. I was talking with an NFL GM last night after the game, and I said, how'd they miss on him? And they said because they evaluated from the neck down. Right, he checks all of these boxes. Man, looks good, but it's neck up. And he said, the best have this complete command of the locker room, of the huddle, and then they have a complete command of the entire field, offense, defenses, conceptually. But can you, as a wide receiver, like when you went to Miami, right, and they have Tannehill. Like, what about here? There's a guy who struggles sometimes throwing the ball downfield.
Absolutely.
But what about neck up with a guy like Tannehill?
See, Tannehill, he gets it. It's just a matter of putting the two together. He's smart. Tannehill, he's tough. He's very smart. His problem is really his accuracy. specifically down the field.
Right.
Once you get past 15 yards with Tannehill, that's where he starts to struggle, and you see like his decision making, it can get better. I think he can improve there, but from what you can dump on him and him going in with a game plan, he's sharp, he's ready, he can handle anything you put on him, but can he execute it? And so when I look at when I watched the game last night and I look at Blake Bortles, he looked for the first time, and I haven't seen him a whole bunch.
Right.
But
nobody sits down and watches Jacksonville Jaguars
But last
games,
night
right?
he looked like, man, I am blowing it.
Yes.
He looked like his play was displeasing himself. When I looked at Chad Henne, which in my opinion, they need to just go with Chad Henne. He looked like he commanded the huddle. He commanded the off. Now, I'm not talking about the savior of Jacksonville right now, the Jaguars.
Right.
But if you're talking about the better option, Chad Henne's your better option.
The consummate backup who has been a starter previously.
Absolutely.
And can look, and a lot of things have gone against Blake Bortles, rotating left tackles, rotating offensive coordinators. They need to have Leonard Fournette last night, which has got to, it's like, look, but like at some point, and there's pressure, but at some point you can either play or you can't play.
Yes, and that's my thing.
And he can't play.
Yeah, that's my thing. With all those offensive coordinators, with all the talent that he has or doesn't have,
they'll all tell you that he's the reason they got fired.
He still hasn't shown us why they're sticking with him.
Okay, so what about Jameis on the other side? And look, I'm as guilty of this as I think any viewer. I love watching Hard Knocks, and I do, with exception maybe the Rams last year. I felt like that one I did not have a great level of confidence. But like when Bill O'Brien was talking, and I was like, man, I love Bill O'Brien. When they went to the Bengals, like, man, I love the Bengals. So I do have a tendency to fall in love with the team, with the quarterbacks, with the players anytime they do Hard Knocks. But I feel like Jameis. I feel confident knowing that Jameis is a franchise quarterback. Am I wrong based upon what I've seen in spurts last year, what I've seen in Hard Knocks, and what I saw on the field?
No, I don't think you're wrong. From what I see as a former player and what I would expect from my quarterback, this guy, forget Hard Knocks. The interview that he did, the in-game interview that he did last night, when he said his mantra for this season is own it. The way he delivered that, and just his whole moxie, everything about him, his posture, his poise, he just gets. I see a young guy that we saw and heard a lot about at Florida State and saw a lot take this huge leap of maturation. I mean, and it's like happening overnight, but everyone believes in this kid, and he has the confidence in himself. And when he said, as a quarterback, as a receiver, as a former receiver, when you hear your quarterback say, I'm going to own it, and then he goes and he throws the interception, which I don't think he was down on that play.
But he did look like he got hit in the head, though, didn't he?
I don't think he got hit around the head.
Okay.
But it was a dumb decision.
Right.
He walks off the field, and the first thing that he does is, my fault.
Yeah. Look, that still works when in the preseason it works, and it works because he owns it. You do that in an NFC Championship game, and it's a little bit different.
But
you do it on the road in Atlanta. It's a little bit different.
What I'm saying is, as a receiver, as a teammate, the person who has to own it more than anyone else is the quarterback.
Yep, and there's no question. Greg Jennings, Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl NFL analyst on Fox Sports 1, joining us in the herd here on Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports Radio, and the iHeart app. I started the show saying, look, I love Tom Brady. He's the most decorated quarterback, most successful quarterback in terms of wins and losses in the biggest game that we have playing the game. But this idea that the game is getting it is easy for him, is super easy for him. It does slow down. Every game, every athlete tells you the more you see it, the more it slows down. But like, let's not forget, struggled against the Texans, struggled at least in the first 2.5 quarters, almost 3 quarters against the Falcons. Think of how differently we would look at Tom Brady and how long he can do this had there not been a colossal series of errors by the Falcons that allowed that comeback to happen.
See, I completely disagree with you here. Like 100% disagree. And here's why. Because, yes, the game does slow down the more you've seen it, the older you get. But I think the struggle that athletes across the board have when you get older, and you know this as a former athlete, when you get older, every game gets easier because you have that much more experience. But then it becomes a matter of, can my body physically match what I'm seeing and what my mind is wanting it to do?
Right.
What Tom Brady has been able to do is do what a lot of us have never been able to do at an age where our bodies physically want to let us down from what we mentally believe. That's why guys struggle retiring, because they believe that I can still do it.
Right. Well,
but your body
but
can't.
You get exposed. You can't run anymore. Like Ray Lewis, he couldn't run anymore. That's
Right.
and his body tore his.
But at a quarterback position, you're not asked to run. You're not asked to do all those things. And you mentioned, the plays or the quarters that he didn't play well. And then the Texans, he's never said that, I'm going to be great. The expectation from us is for him to be flawless almost, but that's not his expectation. It's not unrealistic. We look at a guy who still won the Super Bowl, who we don't look at the first 3 quarters. Who does that? We look at the meltdown from Atlanta in the second half, and we look at the greatness of Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the second half.
Yeah, but they stop being able to pressure him, and when you pressure him, suddenly that age, that inability to be mobile and to make some of the throws he might have been able to make.
He's never been mobile.
He's never
Doug,
been mobile.
Come on, Doug.
He has. He raced the pregnant woman coming third. I know he's slow.
He's never been mobile.
I know he's slow. You'll see Greg Jennings on Speak for Yourself later on today. He's a Super Bowl champion, and you will always see him here in the herd. Great stuff, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Is Connor setting himself up to not just embarrass himself versus Floyd, but maybe embarrass his sport? We'll ask Sugar Shane Mosley. He'll join us next in the herd. Welcome into the herd. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin on a Friday. Christine Leahy alongside. We'll get to her with the news in a moment. You also hear from Floyd Mayweather Sr., who joined Colin yesterday, and Paulie Malignaggi, who joined Colin earlier this week. Christine, are you familiar with the term game slippage?
Yeah. Go. Tell me though.
Okay, look, I suffered from game slippage a lot as a shooter. I was constantly changing my form, trying to fix it in the offseason.
Right. Okay.
And so when you get into an actual ball game, like you regress closer back to what you were, even if you've tried to refine your form time and again, right? Jason Hayward, for example, with the Chicago Cubs, who, by the way, is making $28 million this year. He's hitting .250. He's on base 31% of the time. And if you remember, like every offseason seems to be the same, but I remember when the Cubs started the season, Jason Hayward fixed his swing. Like, no, Jason Hayward has a hole in his swing. And eventually game slippage, even if you've worked on the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, just he swung the bat a different way for the rest of his life. It's really hard for that new form to hold. You slip or you regress back to the mean, if you will. I mean, I think that's ultimately what happens with Connor. I mean, if you look, we haven't seen a lot of the fight with Malignaggi, with the sparring with Malignaggi. But boxers will tell you, no matter how much you work on being a boxer in your form and keeping your hands up and how you're supposed to punch, the more it goes on, the more he'll regress towards what he's always done, which is as a mixed martial artist, as a striker, where the style of punching is far different. And he'll have that game slippage. So even if when he first steps into the ring, he's snapping off his punches like he's supposed to, once the bell sounds, eventually he'll get back to kind of slapping back and forth. And I, having been to MMA fights, I've gone to wrestling meets in college. My son actually wrestles. I love what MMA is. So many of the greats, Daniel Cormier, of course, works for us here at Fox. I went to when he lost to John Bone Jones. Like, I'm sitting there cheering for him, not just because we were classmates and alums of Oklahoma State, but also because, like, I think wrestling's an awesome sport. And those guys have had to evolve into mixed martial artists and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, add Brazilian jiu-jitsu to their game. It takes an unbelievable amount of athleticism and dexterity, and frankly, toughness in order to compete. It is a legitimate sport, okay? But there will be, if they have a record number of buys, and look, Dana White earlier this week said they're on pace to have the most buys in pay-per-view history, on pace for whatever. Like the
You
Dodgers.
don't believe that?
Huh?
You don't believe that?
No, nobody's decided if they're going to buy the fight up until Saturday, right?
Oh, see, I think that they will.
I'm not saying they won't, but I'm saying like on
How do you
pace
know?
for, like, all right, like how do you really track that thing? Right? Is it like, I don't know anybody who's bought the pay-per-view already. Like, you may say I'm going to buy the pay-per-view, but then come Saturday night, like, I still think they'll get probably over 4 million. But the point is this: the most purchased pay-per-view in the history of mixed martial arts was less than 2 million buys. This will probably do north of 4 million buys. In other words, there'll be 2 million homes that will buy this fight that have never seen a mixed martial arts fight before. And I think the fear should be that if you see Conor McGregor, who's thought of as one of the best, like some people think John Bones Jones is the greatest mixed martial artist in the history of the sport. If not for the cocaine, the outside of the octagon stuff, he may have been decorated as such. But if you see, like, this is Conor McGregor, this is the sport's big moment, and they're crossing over, even though all of us who've watched mixed martial arts, and we're continuing to be told, hey, it's a different style, you hold your gloves differently, there's all these different things you have to block and do and move and watch people from... All that said, you're running the risk of 2 million homes, 3 million people, 4 million people watching a fighter to which you're like, dude, that guy can't fight. If Floyd clowns him, if it's the embarrassment that some of us believe it may be, I think it can only do damage to mixed martial arts as a sport in terms of mainstream America. The 2 to 3 million people who will shell out $100 to see a fight. You're like, dude, I can't fight. Like, those guys can't fight at the level of boxers. I think that's my biggest fear when ultimately he will regress towards what he's always done as a striker, not as a boxer. And do viewers who haven't seen a fight in the octagon, do they go like, those guys aren't of the caliber of boxers as athletes, as scientists, if you will, like the sweet science? I can't buy into its legitimacy as a sport, even though I think everyone will tell you it is a legitimate sport. And it's fantastic to watch if you understand it is blood sport, it is a combat sport. There's a gladiatorial aspect to it. Like, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore. Yes, the women fight. Like, you have to be willing to accept that. I think this could actually delegitimize what is a spectacular sport and a great place for the sport of wrestling, which has been decimated by budget cuts for years at the high school and college level, to have a landing spot for professional athletes. I think this could do a lot of harm to it in the future. I do. Let's get to Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Jay Cutler played 2 series in his Dolphins debut. He went 3 of 6 for 24 yards, so that's 50% completion, which is a meh. Is that what you thought too?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I know exactly what Jay Cutler is, right? Like, if you give him time, stand back there, he can spin it. I got some good weapons, and I kind of think they'll be fine. I kind of think they'll be
He'll
just
be meh.
They'll be meh.
Yeah.
They'll be the Dolphins, right? Like, they're gonna beat the Patriots? Like, no. Their defense should be a little.
They sometimes do, though.
I know they do. I mean, like, look, their pass defense has to be better. They have some skill position guys. I kind of think they'll be fine. I don't think they lost a ton or lost anything losing Tannehill and picking up Cutler because of his knowledge of the system and because he's fine. He's fine.
LeBron James, he's really become one of my favorite tweeters and Instagrammers because there is always a message behind what he tweets.
So you like that?
No, but he gives us something to talk about.
Okay.
Because, when he doesn't ever tweet just to tweet. Like, there's always a meaning or a subtweet.
Okay, so what do you got for me?
So he tweeted this. Man, I need some run. Where y'all hooping at? Off season, please hurry up and end. I have basketball Jones. Now, this is the same guy who wanted a lot of rest throughout the season, right? And talks about that they're playing too much, and now all of a sudden he needs to play. And you have Jamal Crawford inviting you up to go play in his Seattle league, and, you could go do that. I think what this is he's kind of freaking out a little bit. Like the Kyrie situation, he's like, no, I want to play. Like, it's like when you break up with your boyfriend and you go post hot pictures of yourself on Twitter and Instagram. Like, look how much better I'm doing. See how much I love what I'm doing. I love basketball. I want to keep playing. And what further proved that for me was he put up an Instagram post of himself in the new jersey and wrote, "Welcome to the Terradome. Let's get this thing back going ASAP. Savage season 15. Like, this is the classic breakup situation where you post a hot picture to make your ex jealous.
So who's his ex?
Kyrie.
Cleveland? Kyrie's his ex?
Yeah. Soon to be
I
ex.
think that he's a Nike guy. The Nike has uniforms.
You don't read
he
into
got
this
the new,
at all.
No, I also think they had the more interesting thing is the pickup ball with Carmelo Anthony, where Carmelo loves to play with a hood, either on or just with a hoodie.
I get that.
And I should ask Greg Jennings about that, because remember he played it was James Jones, right? Played in the NFL with the half zip. Right, and he
totally
played with a hoodie.
What's more comfortable than wearing a hoodie?
Nothing.
Right. So why not be the most comfortable while you're playing?
Again, that's more interesting to me than LeBron going like, "Man, I need to find some run."
That's
Got to be really
sure.
hard. Like, that's got to be hard for a guy who's arguably the greatest basketball player in the last 20 years to where he can't go down to 24-hour fitness and just show up at 6 a.m. and play morning ball with the guys. Like, that can't happen.
Agree. Totally cool if that's how he feels.
Should have been on a group text, not on Twitter.
Yeah, there's a message behind it.
No, the message is I'm trying to be the average guy. I'm trying to be a hooper, a baller. I do think he's trying to portray himself as average hooper, baller guy.
Which
I just
you're
love ball.
not. You're not the average hooper guy.
You're not.
You're the greatest basketball player right now.
I think Durant's actually better, but that's okay.
Oh.
Well, I mean, he played better at the same position in the NBA
Then you can be labeled the LeBron
Finals.
hater today.
I think he's been better throughout his career.
Okay.
But I think that in the NBA Finals, Kevin Durant was better, and they played the same position.
Agree. And finally, Conor McGregor and this McGregor challenge has become a thing. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have not.
Really?
No, what's the McGregor challenge?
This is where it became. Is this the original video? I want to see Conor McGregor doing this, not the other guys. Can we see Conor McGregor? There he is. There's Conor. I don't know if this is a warm up or what he's exactly doing, but
that reminds me. Anybody who's ever played basketball overseas in Europe, they do this thing with their wrists when they warm up, which we don't do, and they do this thing with their knees when they warm up. We don't do.
So
I don't know what that is.
But it's so it's become a thing. People thought it was funny, and now other people are trying the McGregor challenge, and he's trying to do it with mitts. That is not how you do that. Anyways,
that's amazing.
Conor has now seen the people imitating him and doing the McGregor challenge, and here is his response to all of them.
I've seen some videos, but it is what it is. Just been it's a lighthearted. I don't take it personally. If anything, I see stiffness in every single one of them. You must have the limbs free. Your shoulders must be disconnected. You must have the ability to disconnect your shoulders and reconnect it at the point of impact. People are with that skill set is how you can change a jab to a hook in the blink of an eye, or a jab to an uppercut in the blink of an eye.
I don't know if he's being serious or joking, but
I think
it
he's
kind
being
of sounds
serious.
like he's being serious, which concerns me. But he literally thinks that doing that is giving him an edge in boxing because of the...
Was it Murtaugh or Riggs? Who was Mel Gibson's character in... it was Riggs, right? In Lethal Weapon, where he could dislocate his shoulder, right, purposefully to get out of things, and it happened like in every Lethal Weapon.
But
that's what that reminds me of.
He's upset that people are doing this and they're too
clowning
stiff.
him.
No, they're too stiff.
No,
they don't have the fluid motion that Conor has.
They're clowning him. That's Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
How about this? Let's find out if there's some legitimacy to what Conor McGregor is saying. He's a four-time world champion. He's Sugar Shane Mosley. Of course, he fought Floyd Mayweather in 2010. He joins us here in the Herd. I haven't seen him do the McGregor challenge. Good to see you, Sugar. Sugar Shane Mosley joining us here on the set on Fox Sports 1. All right, so Conor says that whatever he's doing with his shoulder, you can change a hook to a jab. You need that type of flexibility, dexterity. As a world champion 4 times over, when you see him do that and hear him say that, what do you think?
I don't think that that's what he's trying to accomplish. I think that he's trying to loosen up his shoulders, and that's just a workout for him, some kind of workout that he's doing. I don't think it has anything to do with how you throw a left hook or, how fluid you're going to be with your left hook or your jab or anything. Just your shoulders. Just loosen up the shoulders, I think.
When you see the film of him fighting, what's your kind of analytical, what's your takeaway of him as a boxer?
When I see him boxing, I see that he does a lot of slapping punches. I see that they're not straight. He doesn't use his body like a boxer would. He uses his body like a UFC guy would. If they're going to tear a guy down or if they're going to kick or grapple, whatever they're going to do. But it's different from boxing.
Okay, so it's different from boxing, but it becomes unorthodox. Does that make it difficult? Because I think the sale they're trying to make is, hey, Floyd's not as fast as he used to be. Hey, this guy, we're using smaller gloves than Floyd usually uses. This guy's a knockdown artist. It's unorthodox. It could happen. Mm-hmm. Does unorthodox work against Floyd Mayweather? You fought against Floyd.
In this case, I don't think it will. I think that he's going to be totally outclassed. I think that they're thinking that they can rough Floyd up and they're going to be able to get their way with him physically. That's not going to work because Floyd's been there with guys that are much more physical than he is and tried to rough him up. Through history of time of Floyd fighting, everybody he's fought has tried to rough him up, knock him down, and do all these different things. And it hasn't worked. So you're going to try the same thing that everybody else has been trying. It's just not going to work. The most awkward person that Floyd fought, I believe, was Maidana. And he was so awkward, he threw punches from everywhere. And Floyd was able to handle that. And a very hard puncher as well. So I think that it's going to be very, very, very hard for McConnor to do anything with Floyd that he hasn't seen.
Floyd still told Stephen A. Smith that he feels like he's going to have to walk him down. Do you think this is just huff and bluster? Because that hasn't been what Floyd has done recently. Recently, he's gotten ahead and then stayed away and just been defensive and stayed out of trouble. What are your thoughts on the idea of Floyd walking down McGregor?
I actually think it's a good idea that he goes to McGregor and walks him down and push him backwards. Make him fight more toe-to-toe because McGregor is not used to fighting going backwards or boxing going backwards. He's used to going forward all the time and lunging and jumping at people. It's probably a good idea for Floyd to walk him back and make him fight the inside game that McGregor doesn't know how to fight.
They changed the gloves from 10 to 8 ounces. Of course, those are still bigger than what they use in UFC. You mentioned the slapping punches, but there's not the normal. He's not snapping his punches like a boxer would, right? So, I mean, when you're a world champion, you see that, you got to think dude, this guy, it can't happen, could it?
Yeah, well, the gloves really don't make a difference because
they do or don't.
They don't.
Okay.
They don't make a difference because Floyd fought in 8-ounce gloves and he fought in 10-ounce gloves. Gloves are only meant to protect the hand so the fighter can punch more and punch harder. They're not meant to protect the other fighter. The reason why they even came up with gloves is so the fighter can punch as long as they can. Back in the olden days, they used to have bare knuckles and they used to use hand wraps. And their hands kept hurting, so they put gloves on so it can continue to fight, knock the guy out, make him bleed, whatever it is they need to do.
Give me the scenario by which Floyd loses this fight.
By the way he loses?
Yes.
I can't even come up with a scenario. The best fight that I think is Floyd Mayweather Sr. and McGregor.
Wait. Floyd Mayweather Sr. is like 61 years old.
He's 64 years old.
64 years old.
Now that's a fight. That's a good fight where I don't know who's going to win. And I slightly pick Floyd Mayweather Sr. I slightly pick him, but I don't know who's going to win that fight.
Wait, so you hit Floyd probably the hardest that he's ever been hit. The
Right.
closest you could
Right.
tell that he was shook up from that.
Right.
knowing that didn't even work,
Right.
is there any chance that Connor can hit him harder and have more of an effect?
The way Connor's technique is right now that I'm watching on the bag, and the way he throws at the bag and hits, he doesn't have enough power boxing-wise to even hurt Floyd. Floyd's been hit by many people that hit hard. I mean, I caught him good in the chin. I hit very hard. Before I lost the fight, I was 38-0 with 35 knockouts. I mean, only 3 people went the distance.
Right.
So he fought Cotto. He fought Manny Pacquiao. He fought Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, the list goes on. Diego Corrales. It goes on. He fought so many people that hit so hard and so big. He fought Canelo Alvarez. And that's getting ready to fight Triple G coming up, and it's going to be an amazing fight.
Yeah.
You cannot compare somebody of this magnitude that's been fighting for so long, since he's probably was 6 years old, been in a fighting family, Roger Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather, Jeff Mayweather, all the Mayweathers, his whole family has been world champions.
Does it bother you at all that this fight has overshadowed the Triple G fight?
It doesn't bother me. I think that, it's bringing the UFC fans closer to boxing so they can understand. I mean, it's 2 different sports. I mean, it's kind of like, I look at my analogy is like the long distance runner run against the sprinter. The long distance runner is going to beat the sprinter in the long distance run, but the sprinter is going to definitely beat the long distance runner in the sprint. It's 2 different fields, 2 different sports. I just can't see McGregor even having a chance.
So Sugar, I guess my fear, and this is what I started this with, is look, I took a while to come over to mixed martial arts, just because the first time I turned on, it was late at night. There's blood everywhere. I was like, whoa. I wasn't even ready for it. And then the more I've understood the different techniques and the different type of athletes that come to it, I've come to really, really enjoy watching it.
Right.
That said, if they got over 4 million buys in this thing, you're going to have a couple million people who have never seen a mixed martial artist fight before in an octagon, let alone a ring. Do you run the risk of hurting his sports credibility, even though you and I and people who cover sports and understand sports, we know it's a different sport. That's easy to say, but if he gets embarrassed, if he looks so awkward there, you're like, does he run the risk of delegitimizing his sport?
I don't know, not really. I mean, we already had this comparison with James Toney and Randy Couture, where James Toney chose to fight Randy Couture at his game and trying to wrestle and all that stuff. He got choked out pretty quick. But I seen James Toney see the opportunity to catch Randy Couture with the punch, which would probably flatten him. Easy. But he chose to fight Randy Couture's way, and he lost. Conor McGregor's choosing to fight Floyd Mayweather's way, boxing, and he's most likely going to lose horribly.
All right, how about this one? There is a running narrative by some that Floyd is the greatest fighter of all time, or at least, not just currently the best pound for pound fighter.
I can't say that.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. You've been around this thing. You've been a champ. You've also fought against him, and there's a lot of all-time greats. And remember, one of the things Floyd has cleverly done, he waited Pacquiao out a couple years to where Pacquiao was not the Pacquiao of old. Now he's fighting this fight, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to see him fight. He's not fighting Triple G. That fight ain't
That never
happen.
happened. No.
That's never going to happen. He did beat Canelo.
Yeah.
And Canelo was just too slow for him.
Too young.
So what's your sense of Mayweather and how boxers view him in terms of one of the all-time greats?
I view it like this. Each fighter has their era. Sugar Leonard, Tom Hearns, Roberto Duran, they had their era. Muhammad Ali, Ken Norton and Joe Frazier, they had their era. So each, Sugar Robinson, me and Oscar, we had our era, Oscar and Trinidad. So there's different eras. I think in this era, or the era that is passing now, his era is leaving, and he was the best in his era. So he ruled the throne or the kingdom in that era. I wouldn't say that he's the best ever. I don't think there's a best ever in any class or any era, because we just don't know. Styles make fights. You don't know what can happen. I mean, sure, they say Sugar Robinson was the best ever. They say Muhammad Ali was the best ever, but I mean, he lost. Sugar Robinson lost. They kept against somebody that were, of equal and better, style.
He's Sugar Shane Mosley. He's a 4-time champion. He's been great to join us here, talk with us on air, talk with us off air. You'll see him throughout the day on Fox Sports 1. Sugar, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is absolutely ours. The Colts are a mess. Luck is still out, and Chuck Pagano is frustrated. But where does the fault lie in Indy? When did the spiral, when did the vortex start? I got a theory. I'll share it with you next in The Herd. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin, The Herd on Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports Radio, and the iHeart app. Christine Leahy with a cat that ate the canary grin. What's going on over there? You have this wry smile on your face.
I know. It's because I just saw something disturbing on Twitter.
There's lots of disturbing things on Twitter. Go ahead.
So the Bulls are not going to play on TNT all year, which is kind of crazy to think of.
Yeah, like a signature team like the Bulls, one that made the playoffs last year.
The TNT crew, including Charles Barkley, just did a whole piece where they laid the Bulls to rest, and it was making me laugh.
Oh, okay. I thought, did they do the running of the Bulls along with it, where the Bulls get gored at the end?
No,
Was
it's a funeral.
It's a funeral?
Yes.
It's very funny?
Well, it's kind of messed up, but it's funny.
Yeah, well, messed up.
That's why I was smiling.
Lakers are on a bunch. They're on national TV a ton.
Yeah.
The Zoe factor, whether or not they're any good or not, doesn't seem to matter. Not that anybody thinks the Bulls are going to be any good, as they are in rebuild mode, but so are the Lakers, and yet the Lakers are going to be on a ton. That's going to be interesting. Be fascinating stuff. Okay, so I don't know if you saw this story, but I did, and I thought it was kind of interesting that Chuck Pagano he's just upset, and he's mad because everybody's hurt. Right, that's like his whole team. Everybody's injured, and he gets on his soapbox to voice his frustration with injuries. You'd like to have them all out there, he said, but you have to work and practice. My hat goes out to the guys who are here to practice and push through. He was asked about guys who aren't pushing through. He says, we're looking at everything, making sure we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, getting them in here 45 minutes post-practice recovery session, doing rollers, nutrition. It's sleep, it's hydration, it's everything. There's no off season anymore. We've got 9 weeks to develop guys. The pros figure it out. Young guys don't have a clue. We have them for 9 weeks, and then we cut them loose for 5. You can't do anything with them. Can't talk football with them. Can't tell them what to put in their bodies. We have to trust they're going to do the right thing. So they come back in 5 weeks, and they haven't done what they're supposed to do. It's a good chance you're going to pull a muscle, really good chance. So it's on all of us. They lost Ryan Kelly, the latest Colts player who will miss time. He'll be out 6 to 8 weeks after having foot surgery. Dante Moncrief has a shoulder problem. Philip Dorsett, former first-round pick, has a hamstring issue. You name it, they have injuries all over. But the most important injury is they don't have Andrew Luck. And what's fascinating about the Colts is they're the opposite of the Jaguars. Like the Jaguars they've made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in drafting. But the Jaguars have gone out and spent money in free agency. They've tried to change coaches, change coordinators. They've tried to do everything they can to get it to work. Whereas the Colts, outside of dumping games and getting Andrew Luck, everything has gone wrong. And, look, it's easy to put the blame on Ryan Grigson. He traded for Trent Richardson, who everybody knew was terrible. But some of that blame has to fall on Pagano, doesn't it? Doesn't it? What if Tom Brady didn't win the Super Bowl? We tackle that next. What up? Welcome in. This is The Herd, wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening to the show. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. I'm Doug Gottlieb, filling in for our esteemed host, Colin Cowherd. Christine Leahy apparently did not have another vacation day to use. That's why she's stuck with me for another hour.
That's not true. I just really wanted to be here today.
I have
lots of vacation days that I fully intend on using.
I was thinking about bringing my pup in just because I know how much of a dog lover you are.
Wait.
What?
Why didn't you let me know? Because I've been dying to do this, that Jersey could sit on my lap and your dog could be over there.
My dog cannot sit on my lap. My dog is too big to sit on my lap.
He can sit on the couch.
This is what I was told. Yeah, this is what I was told. I'm new here, okay? I've been to a couple networks. I'd like this to be my last network that I work for. Well, I don't want to. I'd like to work here for the remainder of my career. I don't want this is my last network. So I was told there's a strict no dogs allowed policy. Now, I know Trappy.
Who did you ask?
This was discussed in the makeup room. Sharif, I believe, actually.
Jersey has been in that makeup room before.
Yeah, but
and by the way, did you remember when 2 Chainz was here and
yes,
I held Trappy?
Trappy, but that was 2 Chainz. Like he's an award-winning artist.
Well, you're
like
Doug Chainz, so it works.
Okay. Next time I'll bring Odell Beckham Jr. and he'll sit on the couch.
And I'll have Jersey right here, and you won't even know. It'll be perfect.
What kind of dog is Jersey?
She's a pug, and she only weighs 12 pounds.
Pug
I just
life?
took her to the vet the other day. She's teeny, and you won't even know.
You would definitely know when my sheepadoodle was here.
What a doodle?
A sheepadoodle.
Did you? That sounds like some cross mating going on.
It is. Any doodle is a crossbreed between a poodle and a sheepdog in this particular case.
Okay, not a
golden
sheep, but a
doodle
sheepdog.
is a golden retriever and a poodle. Labradoodle is a Labrador and a poodle. There's a Maltese and poodle. There's all those things. Sheepadoodle. Hypoallergenic. I don't want to give this away. You know, this is what happens. My daughter's name is Harper. She's 11 years old. If you look, Harper has become a fairly popular name, and all of the Harpers in this world are under the age of 11. I've been on
because
TV.
of you.
I think that's what it is. And now I'm telling people about this incredible hypoallergenic dog to which you can get in all different kinds of sizes. They're beautiful, they're cute, they're easy to train, they're a little bit more mellow than golden doodles, and people are going to copy me. And now it's going to be a run on sheepadoodles because of me. We'll play for you Brad Stevens joining us upcoming this hour. I want to start with Tom Brady, who is behind me if you're watching us on Fox Sports 2. I'm not trying to defame Tom Brady in any way. I wish I was a Patriots fan. Like Colin is a Patriots fan, but that's just because he decided I'm going to switch teams once he saw the Patriots were winning. He loves a winner. He's like every other fan base, right? You start winning, and I start becoming a fan. I wish I was a Patriots fan because I love not just his longevity, his balance, the way I like the pragmatism that they use for their success. There's not one style. They've been a 3-4 team. They've been a 4-3 team. They've been a run-heavy team. They've been a team that passes it and never runs it. They've done just about everything. Right? They used to have Randy Moss. Then they focused on tight ends and Wes Welker in between. They do whatever it takes to win the game. That's the motto of Bill Belichick. They're not the old school, we do well, and everybody else adjusts to us. That said, I always find it fascinating on how we kind of remember the last time we saw somebody based upon the last moment we saw them. Tom Brady was not good for most of the Super Bowl. Now, you could say this about a lot of quarterbacks. When you pressure them, they become normal. They just become a guy. But we look at Brady in the AFC divisional game against the Texans. He wasn't good. We look at him in the loss to the Denver Broncos the previous season. When pressured, his offensive line wasn't good. He wasn't good. And we look at him against a super athletic defense that did wear down and did go out in the draft and add more pieces to pressure the passer. When pressured by the Falcons, he throws a pick six. He wasn't good in the first half, 66.8 passer rating. Now, part of the greatness to Tom Brady is he was able to stick with it and to find some holes within the Falcons defense. The Falcons defense wore down, and eventually he had a great fourth quarter, had a good drive at the end of the third quarter as well. But I heard this cut from Jay Glazer, and I'm not saying he's not lying. He has great balance about him. He has seen everything. Here was Tom Brady with Jay Glazer going back 2 days ago, talking about the fact that he believes he's a better quarterback now than maybe he's ever been.
I feel like I've worked hard to get to this point. So going into my 18th year, I've learned a lot. You know, I've had the experiences, played the defense, played in the big games. And I still feel like I can perform at a really high level. So I think now this is the time to really start having fun. I mean, every time I go on the field, I feel like, all right, well, I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know where to go with the ball. And, you know, football is in some ways easier now for me than it ever was because, you know, it's just, I've been doing it longer. I've had the experience, and, you know, hopefully that experience can pay off.
There's a continuum there, right? There's you have to have the intelligence and the wisdom and experience in order to be successful. On the other hand, when you're young and you're virile, you have more God-given verve and talent. arm strength, foot speed, the ability to bounce back from being hit. And at some point, the continuum slides over too much to where you're Peyton Manning in your last year and you have all the intelligence in the world, but your arm's just gone, right? You can't throw a football. And I'm not saying Brady's there just yet, but we do remember how we saw him last against the Falcons. And if you think about it this way, if the Falcons had Julio Jones makes the catch, if they just taken a knee 3 times in a row, kicked a field goal, they win the game, we probably have a different outlook on Brady and the Patriots and the possibility for his longevity this season. And if you think it's only football, it's not. It's not. Aroldis Chapman he's hurt, but there's a chance he's lost his job as closer with the Yankees. And a lot of people in baseball point to how he was used or overused by Joe Madden last year in the playoffs, last year in the World Series. And it's interesting, like Joe Madden completely butchered his use of the bullpen last year in the World Series. Like they were a far better team, far more talented team, better bullpen, better starters, especially considering who is healthy for the Indians, better lineup than the Indians, yet they had to come from 3-1 down and win in a Game 7, and one that was that at the end was close in Game 7 in order to win their first World Series since 1908. And I think if you asked Joe Madden with the truth serum, or if you asked anybody in baseball, they'd say, like, Joe Madden did not manage a particularly good series. Like, he made a bunch of mistakes. Theo loaded him up with a great bullpen, and he went with 3 guys the entire World Series. Whereas he could have used his strength in numbers. They could have just overwhelmed the Indians. He did not. But we don't remember that, and we won't remember that historically because Cubs won. 2012, Duke won the national title in college basketball. Remember, Brad Stevens is going to join us. That was when Gordon Hayward, Brad was the coach. Gordon Hayward missed the half-court shot. Do you remember that? What people fail to remember at times is that Brian Zubek, the starting center for Duke, was at the free throw line, up a point. He made the first one, and Mike Krzyzewski told him to intentionally miss the second free throw. Now, there was logic behind it. It wasn't completely illogical move that, hey, everybody has an end-of-game play, especially Brad Stevens. There's a respect for what Brad can do. And if you miss the free throw, there was no timeouts. The clock starts moving. It's harder to run an end-of-game play. The problem with it is, had that shot gone in from Gordon Hayward at midcourt, Duke would have lost. Butler would have won the national championship. The smart play, and if Mike Krzyzewski had a chance to go back and do it, and he was asked about this subsequently, to do it again, you would have Zubek make that free throw. Because then even if Brad Stevens draws up an incredible play and they throw in a 3-point shot, it ties the game. The worst case scenario, you play in overtime and Duke has more talent, Duke wins the national title. Or you put yourself in position, 5 more minutes, we have better players, we've been here before, we can win it. The point is this. I'm a guy that's always thought Aaron Rodgers checks more boxes than Brady. Brady's the most accomplished quarterback of this era and really of any era in the National Football League. He's great. But this idea that his play hasn't slipped, that he is without flaw, that he is better now, that he sees things differently, like did he see it when he threw the ball and it hits off of a defender's leg and pops up into, wasn't Amendola's hands, was it? It was into Edelman's hands. Like, was that part of his years of experience that he was able to see the defense magically and make that pass? Or were they a little bit lucky that Atlanta didn't run the clock out, that Atlanta wasn't smart, and that they made some plays that they previously had not made, and that his errors in the first half were not so pronounced that they couldn't come back? 28-3 should have been insurmountable. It was surmountable, but there was a ton of luck that came with that comeback. And so while the victors rightfully get the spoils, let's not act like he is prime Tom Brady. He may mentally be prime, but physically, he's still 40 years old. And there has to be a reason, a logical reason why Belichick is keeping the Garoppolo around. Because Belichick watches the first 3 quarters. Because Belichick saw the Texans game. Because Belichick saw against the Denver Broncos and realizes this is uncharted territory for a star quarterback. And eventually, Father Time wins. Father Time always wins. And he's not going to let the fourth quarter fool him. Just like we can't be fooled by Joe Madden butchering the bullpen use for the Cubs, even though they won the World Series. Or Mike Krzyzewski's decision, which was the wrong decision, even though it worked out for Duke in 2012. It was 2010, not 2012. I said 2012. 2010. Appreciate that. All the talk is LeBron to L.A., right? LeBron, L.A. Would Paul George join him? Right? That's been the talk. LeBron to L.A. Kyrie's leaving because LeBron's leaving. But isn't there another superstar that has to make a decision before LeBron and nobody's talking about? We'll talk about him next in The Herd. You'll hear our interview with Brad Stevens upcoming in 10 minutes after Christine with the news. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. He'll be back Monday in The Herd. If you missed any of his great work this week or any of what we've discussed earlier today, download the Herd podcast, wherever podcasts are available. And, of course, you can also download the Doug Gottlieb Show podcast, also available on iTunes, foxsportsradio.com, wherever you download podcasts. Rate it, subscribe to it, and hopefully you enjoy it. Christine was just having a discussion, which I think is a very poignant, purposeful discussion, to which I was asked whether or not a chiropractor is a doctor.
Right. I think we're on the same page.
We are on the same page. If somebody is sick on a flight and the stewardess says, flight attendant says, is there a doctor on board? The chiropractor does not stand up and say, I'm a doctor. Or here's a better one. If you're out tonight having drinks, are you going out tonight? Didn't you say you were going to an arcade?
Not tomorrow. Tonight is still up for debate.
Tonight is up for debate. You can tweet at Christine because she's not sure about the longevity of her relationship, which has been going for more than a year and a half with her boyfriend.
That is not what I said.
Well, actually, she is sure. She just doesn't
That's your
know.
theory.
No, that's not my theory. It is a theory. A theory is a hypothesis which has been proven over time, so it is in fact a theory. Anyway,
we're talking about chiropractors.
So you're out tonight, and somebody asks me, "What do you do?" And I say, "Well, I do a little radio, a little TV. I do some basketball on TV as well." "Oh, cool. What do you do?" And the guy says, "I'm a doctor." "Oh, what kind of medicine do you practice?" He says, "I'm a chiropractor." I'm like, "Come on, dude. Just say you're a chiropractor. Like, you're not a doctor, even if you don't say you're a doctor.
Yeah,
if you're not a doctor. You're a chiropractor.
Like, if you didn't go to med school,
right?
You're not a doctor. Like, you're a doctor of being a chiropractor. It's not like an MD.
Yeah.
But if I'm on a plane and there's something going on,
with your back,
if I need a doctor, and there isn't an MD doctor on the plane, I would take a chiropractor as the backup.
But you wouldn't, if somebody pops up, it's like a podiatrist. Podiatrist hops up and you're like, this guy's having trouble breathing.
No, that I would say is okay, because a podiatrist can perform foot surgery, meaning that they went to med school and they did their residency probably in other areas. So he'd probably know what to do. So
a podiatrist is a doctor, but you'd agree that because they didn't go to med school and they weren't a resident, that a chiropractor is not a doctor. I'm not saying a chiropractor is not a reputable field, and all of us, anybody who's ever been to a chiropractor, I don't need the x-rays. I don't need you to put me on a program. I got a rib out or something. Just crack my back and fix me up. I will feel like $1 million. You are super helpful to society. I feel better when I go to a chiropractor. I am not diminishing your field, but let's not overstate your field or your level of preparedness for taking care of the human body, calling yourself a doctor, because you're not a doctor.
Well, they are a doctor because that's the title that they have, but they're a doctor of being a doctor of chiropractic. How does that work?
Yeah, we agree to disagree on this one. We're going to disagree on this one. Doctor in name only. That's like somebody gets a PhD and they call themselves doctor.
Well, you are a doctor, just not in the sense of what we're thinking of as a doctor.
In Los Angeles and frankly nationwide, there's this sense that LeBron James is leaving Cleveland. We've talked about it. Colin talked about it yesterday with the Chris Sheridan tweet heard around the world that there's 100% chance LeBron James is playing his last year in Cleveland because the relationship between he and Dan Gilbert is beyond repair. And with the Lakers openly opining for him, with their salary structure such that they can add 2 max players next year, and when you couple it with some of the tweets that LeBron's had about LA being home, we know he has a Brentwood home, people are making the assumption that he's going to be a Laker next season. And I know people who work for the Lakers that think they're getting him. They don't know they're getting him. They think they're getting him. But that decision won't be made until next July. Here we are in August 18th. And though Russell Westbrook has until the middle of October, so that's 2 months away, the truth is the decision seems like it should already have been made. On his desk or on his phone, because you can sign it with like DocuSign or any other sort of, or on his agent's desk is a contract extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder for $217 million over 5 years. You do the math. That's a lot of money. Like, that's a crazy amount. That is just south of $50 million per year. 217 over 5. And he has not signed it. Now, that doesn't mean that, like LeBron James, he can't change his mind. Like LeBron can, even now, I'm out of Cleveland, I'm done. And he has some epiphany and he changes his mind between now and next year. And he decides, I'm staying in Cleveland and I'm going to figure it out. And eventually I want to own the team. I want to buy out Dan Gilbert. That's how I'm going to stay. And it doesn't mean that Russell Westbrook can't win an NBA championship. I don't know. I mean, I think it's highly unlikely, but crazier things have happened, right? They have Paul George, they have him, they have Steven Adams, they have Enes Kanter. Maybe they move Enes Kanter around the trade deadline and acquire another asset. And but if you know what you have in Oklahoma City, you know you're the guy, you won an MVP award, and they have shown you by going out and getting Paul George, they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep you there. You have a $217 million contract extension, 5 years, sitting on your desk. You choose not to sign it. Aren't you telling us you're on the market? Aren't you telling us that you're going to look elsewhere? Why else would you not sign it? Right? Like, what else possibly could the Oklahoma City Thunder do in order to keep you other than making that Paul George move? They can't change the terms of the contract. We're going to give you the absolute most money that you could possibly make anywhere. He can't make that money elsewhere. They showed the ability to create a team that he can win the MVP with. No, I don't think any of us think he can win a championship there as they're currently constructed, but they can be competitive. And, like, look, the Spurs, Tony Parker's not going to be back till midseason. We don't know if he'll ever be back. LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't appear to fit. The Clippers aren't what they used to be. People think that, like, roster-wise, Houston's roster looks better, but is their team actually better? Memphis is no longer a playoff team, or at least I don't probably think so, losing Zebo. We're guessing Minnesota's going to be better, but they're not going to be better than the Thunder, are they? You got Golden State, and then what? Why can't the Thunder be the second best team? And if you're right there and you have a contract extension and they've shown to move mountains in order to keep you, why wouldn't you sign? Because you're telling us that you're looking elsewhere. It's the only thing that makes sense. Let's get to Christine with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
UCLA's quarterback Josh Rosen was a topic of lots of discussion recently for the comments that he made about academics and school maybe not going together. So Jim Mora has been asked about this now, and he said that he's not going to stifle Rosen as long as he's responsible.
I don't ever want to stifle his opinions. I just want to make sure that he's aware that when he does say something publicly, there are ramifications. And I think what he's realizing is that anytime you speak out, people are going to form opinions of you, sometimes good, sometimes bad. There might be some backlash. Perceptions are changed, and you have a responsibility to make sure that you think about those things before you do speak.
I think that's extremely well said. I think you want your quarterback to be vocal and a leader, and he's got to learn this. You can't just tell a kid what to do. They have to learn by trial and error. And he's seeing, okay, maybe I have to be careful with what I say or make sure that I'm controlling the message a little bit.
I think this is first of all, it's perfect handling of it by Jim Mora. Mm-hmm. It is, where kid's going to be accountable for what he says, but I'm not going to stop him from talking. That's not. And by the way, Jim Mora knows this. Remember, he was head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He was on a Seattle radio station, and they were like, and whether he was serious or kidding, he sure didn't sound like he was kidding. He was like, hey, they called me to coach at UW. I'm coming back. I will leave what I'm doing, even in the middle of a playoff hunt, to be the head coach of Washington, University of Washington, because that's where I played. That's where I grew up. That's how important it is to me. And really that among other things, led to his ouster in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So he understands that things you say you will be held accountable for. And it's a great lesson for Josh Rosen to learn that, look, Josh Rosen was only saying from his perspective, he's a 21-year-old kid. He doesn't know everything. But at 21, you think you know everything. And I thought he spoke out of turn, and he actually contradicted himself. But that doesn't mean we should stifle his thought or stifle his ability to speak.
Why do you think he spoke out of turn?
Well, he's speaking about school and football school and sports, school and football not working together when others have made it work at the highest level, both academia and football. And he's also contradicting the fact that he's doing it himself. He's saying something that's really hard is impossible. Hard and impossible are two different things.
Yeah. So maybe not. I think it's exactly what he should be talking about. It's maybe not out of turn, but
I'm speaking for other people.
Okay.
When you speak for other people, you speak out of turn. That's more. That's what I meant. Okay.
I got it. So according to two different sportsbooks in Las Vegas, the odds for NBA Rookie of the Year to top both of their lists are Lonzo Ball and Ben Simmons. Now, Ben Simmons hasn't played a game yet.
Right. It's like the Blake Griffin thing.
But is he a rookie? Are you okay with him being a candidate for Rookie of the Year?
Joel Embiid was the candidate for Rookie of the Year last year. He hadn't played previous to that. Blake Griffin was Rookie of the Year. He hadn't played. So, yeah, I mean, we consider you rookie because you haven't played an NBA minute.
But do you think that they have an edge, at least being around the NBA, traveling, working with their teammates?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tough thing. I would never want to see Rookie of the Year taken away from a guy like that.
It's like, can you be Freshman of the Year if you're a redshirt freshman?
Yeah.
We see this in baseball, though. There's a certain number when you get a September call-up that doesn't count against your Rookie of the Year your next year when you play a full season.
Yeah. And finally, this is my favorite story of the day, I think. There was a teacher, I don't know where this teacher is from, but I'm going to guess Chicago, and you'll see why, handed something out to the students in his or her class to explain why you should be like Michael Jordan and should not be like Kevin Durant. And this is why. Do not be like KD. Do not take the easy way out. Things like cheating, plagiarizing, and copying your friend's homework may not seem like a big deal now, but they are building habits that can significantly hinder you later in life. Additionally, always strive to finish what you've started. Half-finished homework is unfinished homework. Making valid points there. I don't support the whole thing. And then this is do be a Michael Jordan. MJ, the GOAT, the greatest thing this man ever did was saving the Looney Tunes from a lifetime of servitude to an alien race. Did MJ take the easy way out? No. Did he ever back down from a challenge? No. Be like Mike. So I applaud this teacher probably getting the attention of a lot of her students in a way that she probably wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Correct. But I don't support saying what they did about Kevin Durant.
Yeah, that Kevin Durant took the easy way out?
Yep.
No, but it's, again, you have to take it in the idea was get their attention because it's a picture of Kevin Durant.
It's a great
something
strategy.
the kids know. It's a good strategy.
Yes.
We don't have to decipher every single word and go like, well, he didn't really take the easy way out. He actually went to a place where he's happier.
It's a good strategy, but if one of those kids is a Kevin Durant or a Warriors fan, this isn't going to work. You're going to have a lot of cheating kids. But can you see why I think this teacher's from Chicago?
Yeah, because it's Jordan, and Jordan's the GOAT, and Jordan's got all the rings.
Also, Kevin Durant saw this
and
responded on Twitter, whoever did this should be fired and thrown in jail. I think he's kidding. I don't think he really wants that teacher to be fired and thrown in jail, but I find it very funny that he is writing back to a lot of the people that have said things about him.
I think so, too. That's Christine with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
We talked to Celtics head coach Brad Stevens earlier, and we wanted to bring it back for you for a little bit. We know that he's not a big gamer. He's actually a big player of Miss Pac-Man. So we started off by asking, of all things, Brad Stevens, if he thinks of himself as a gamer because he loves Miss Pac-Man.
No, I'd consider myself not technologically advanced. And so and it's actually funny because obviously I'm not able to play it every day or every game day, but there's a, if you've got a couple of minutes, and I want to take my mind off of the film I'm watching, or just kind of get away. I said yesterday, it's kind of my version of mindfulness, I guess. I get there and I just sit down. We've got that old pizza parlor machine in our basement.
Oh, where you can sit across from each other and it turns around?
And you can sit across from each other, and then you've got all the different 80s Atari games that are all on there. And, so my 8-year-old and 11-year-old are two of the few, I guess, that get into Frogger and Pac-Man and Galaga and all those high-level gaming games. There's probably an esports division being created right now for those.
Okay, so let's go back. You had this incredible run in the playoffs, especially considering you lose your first 2 games. Isaiah loses his sister. There's all that emotion. You win the next 4 to beat the Celtics, and we know about the run. The season's over. What was your honest level of confidence that Gordon Hayward would join you as a free agent?
No clue. We had no clue, and I talked to him the night at midnight of July 1st, and got a chance then to sit down with him, with Al, Isaiah, members of our coaching staff, front office. We had our guys that were there for Summer League were still there. They left a couple hours earlier, so we met some of our younger players like Jalen and Jason, and then we put our best foot forward. But I had no clue, and after he left, obviously, he went and met with Utah, and I know how much he struggled with that decision, and I did not hear from him until right after he put out the Players Tribune piece. I talked to him a little bit after he left Boston, but not that day that he put out the Players Tribune piece, and so I actually was starting to read it when he called.
He in the Players Tribune piece, he thanked Utah. He went through all the different people in Utah who helped him along the way, and the change, the kind of metamorphosis from boy to man after leaving Butler and becoming a professional basketball player. But in it, he said, look, basically the reason I'm doing this is because of you, Brad, is because of his trust in you. And part of it was, he said that you would have been okay had he decided to go to Miami, to go to Utah, or whatever he decided. You said you would support because of your friendship and your belief in him as a person. There had to be a psychology in that, right? You had to, because of your time spent together at Butler, you had to understand that these were the buttons to push to get him, right?
I didn't really look at it. I don't think you really look at it that way. And he had 3 great options, and he had one, that was going to be really hard to leave because of, Utah's a great organization. They've done a great job. Snyder's, a terrific coach, a guy that I learn a lot from just watching. And, I think that ultimately there were probably a lot of factors, but I think that you can't discount when anybody chooses to come here, just what this tradition, what sports in this city means.
Look, you have to give to get. In order to get Marcus Morris, you had to trade away Avery Bradley, who everybody thinks is a terrific player. He's versatile, and as you talked about defense, that's the staple of what you've built your team around, your program around, going back to Butler and here with the Celtics. And there's been some criticism of Danny's lack of desire to trade away the upcoming first-round picks to next year and not making the moves to Paul George. How lockstep are you guys in the decisions that have been made so far with the composition of the roster?
Well, I think Danny is one of the things that is funny to me is when people call him Trader Danny, right? He's really measured. He's really smart. He has got, he goes through every scenario. He's thoughtful about every decision that he makes. It's not easy. To be, to have to trade away Avery. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do for all of us. He is a terrific player. He was great in our locker room. He's a great guy, and I hope the very, very best for him. He's one of the few guys, along with Kelly Olynyk, also hard to lose, that had been here the entire time that I had been here. And so, I think the bottom line is that we're talking all the time, front office. comes up with all the ideas or in the middle of all the conversations, and they keep me up to speed as needed. And, our owners are great about both being there for their thoughts and giving their opinions on it, but also giving Danny the latitude to do his job. And, I'd say we're very connected. And, hey, that's the really good part, about being here from my own standpoint, from a professional standpoint. And as I've said before, we had vetted that pretty thoroughly. It's probably not an easy job if, your ownership's thinking one way, your front office is thinking another, and your coaches are thinking a third. I think you've got to be committed to, to continually getting better. Not everything's going to go perfect, but, we're totally committed.
Last thing, what's the likelihood that this is your roster heading into the first game of the season?
Oh, I'd say that's very likely. There's not a ton of moves as you look across the league, at this point. And I'm not the guy that makes those calls or anything like that. But I think when you get to the 1st of August or to the middle of August, most of your roster is set, and most of what you're going to be looking at the start of the season is set. So, as far as all my planning and what I work on a day-to-day basis, obviously you're always on your toes should anything change. But I've been focused on this roster that we have, and trying to get the most out of this next group and help put people in position to soar with their strengths.
Well, listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. I know you're headed to the airport with a little family trip. Thanks so much for talking Miss Pac-Man with us and about the Celtics. Enjoyed the rest of whatever remains of your summer, and we'll catch up real soon, Brad.
All right. Thanks. See you, Doug.
The pleasure was absolutely ours. Brad Stevens in the herd here on Fox Sports 2 and Fox Sports Radio and the iHeart Radio app. Ryan Grigson takes a ton of blame for the Colts not being able to build on the legacy of Andrew Luck, who's still hurt. Should he take all of the blame now that he's departed? What led to the Colts being this kind of dysfunctional, stagnant organization? I'll share it with you next in the herd. Colin is back Monday. Dana White will be alongside him. I will be heading out to Vegas next week. Christine's going to Vegas as well for the fight.
Well, I'm not going to the fight as of right now. But yes, I will be in Vegas.
You don't have you don't have connections. You can't make a call. You can't send a text. You're Christine Leahy.
It's a hard fight.
I think you'll be okay. My guess is you will be. And here's the other problem. And I think you're this way, and I know I'm this way. Would you take a seat way up at the top? Somebody says, I'm not going to charge you.
Not because I'm snobby. I'd rather watch it on TV because then I can see what's going on.
People would consider that a seat snob. I would consider it a seat snob. I'm okay saying I'm a seat snob. You can give me a ticket at the top of the arena. I'm going at T-Mobile, right? I'm going to sell it because I'm just you give it to me.
You're going to go so far as to say you'll sell it?
Yeah, I mean it's got value. I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to try and trade it so I can move down. Like I want to be. What's the point of being there if you can't see it?
It's very smart of you. Trade it too.
Yeah, you can trade it. I've done the trading thing as well. So if you get two and you want to trade and move down, I'll be. I'm your huckleberry.
Great.
So look, some video is so good that you have to play it as often as possible. And with the Colts kind of muddled as they're waiting for the season to kick off, they kick off against the Rams, by the way, at the Coliseum, which I think is great news for the Rams because right now Andrew Luck is still not cleared to play. He's on the PUP list. And if you're Sean McVay, you gotta get off to a start where you can get a win at home. And they didn't score a offensive touchdown at home last year. You'll want to do it against the Colts. They are just battered and bruised by injuries, and they've lost their starting center for 6 to 8 weeks, which is not good news. You can't play this video enough because when you think of Chuck Pagano, head coach of the Colts, you think of this as one of the worst calls of all time.
Little deception here by the Colts on a 4th down and 3 coming up from the 47. A snap to Anderson, and he bobbled it, and he's brought down by Bolden.
My God.
The Colts had
Illegal
everybody.
formation. The whole right side of the line was not on the line of scrimmage. Offense. This penalty is declined. The result of the play is first down for New England.
So you had the whole punt formation.
That from the Patriots radio network. It wasn't just the worst fake punt of all time. It was actually an illegal bad fake punt. So even if somehow the Patriots who were standing right in the way had fallen down or the line sniper had gotten them and they tripped, the play still would have come back. And I guess, look, Ryan Grigson did a terrible job of surrounding Andrew Luck with talent. Everything, they're basically the opposite of the Jaguars. We started today talking about the Jaguars and Blake Bortles and how he looks like a guy who, he's always looked like a guy who lacked some of the intangible qualities from neck up to match with the tangible qualities from neck down to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. And now he seems to have lost his confidence, and I think he's going to lose his job in Jacksonville. But at least Jacksonville, not in totality, like the Justin Blackmon draft didn't work. They've drafted other players that haven't been great. But at least they've done their best to constantly try and surround him with talent, most notably Leonard Fournette, who they drafted this year. The Colts have done the opposite. The Colts got the quarterback right at the right time. They got Luck. And when healthy, he's been as good or better than advertised. And Grigson should take blame because he pulled off arguably one of the worst trades of all time. It was the Trent Richardson trade, and it wasn't just a bad trade because he traded a first-round pick for a running back. It was a first-round pick for a running back who they had NFL tape on. Everyone else in the league knew Trent Richardson couldn't play, but even if you trade for Trent Richardson, a first-round draft pick for a running back who you've seen is likely to struggle to play, that was such a reach as a move. But it's funny, we like to play the fake punt. We like to point out that Grigson screwed some things up, and yet we don't point out kind of the obvious in that Chuck Pagano, who's complaining about players not taking care of their bodies, and we have them for 5 weeks, and then 9 weeks, and then we lose them for 5 weeks, and we got to hope they eat right, and they're just not right, and now they're all hurt. Like, there's a guy that's pointing the finger in a million different directions. Can we all agree that the Colts were poorly run by Jim Irsay? We thought going back a year ago he was going to get rid of the GM and the coach. He got rid of neither. And maybe the decision that started all of this was like it was an impossible decision to make. But maybe they could. Bruce Arians was the head coach, Andrew Luck's first year. Bruce Arians is a quarterback whisperer. Bruce Arians has been a good football coach, head coach outside of Indianapolis when he went to Arizona. I mean, the truth is that Pagano is as much the problem as Grigson is. And obviously, case in point, the fake punt, but many of the other decisions that have been made and his lack of personal accountability towards it. And look, it's impossible to fire a guy when he's out with cancer, right? Like in the NFL, they will tell you can't lose your job to injury. You can. Drew Bledsoe lost his job to injury. Tony Romo lost his job to injury. Players lose their job to injury all the time. Coaches can't lose their job to cancer, though. You just can't be that guy that goes like, hey, we love you, and it was Chuck Strong, and we want to fight for it. But at what point is there the statute of limitations on we love Chuck Pagano, the guy, but the team ain't good enough? They've been in a bad division, right? One to which the Texans haven't had a quarterback, the Jaguars haven't had a quarterback, and up until they drafted Mariota, and even you go back to Mariota's first year, they just didn't have the talent to compete, and they didn't have a quarterback. Like, it was a layup for the Colts, and they've been unable to be a dominant team, some because of their personnel, but also because of their coaching. And I get that Chuck Pagano is frustrated over the litany of Colts injuries, but hey, dude, this is your watch, isn't it? Christine, there's one issue with us going to Vegas next week. You're just going for the fight if you have a ticket, right? Are you doing that thing?
I'm not. I'm going for fun.
You're going for fun?
For the weekend, yes. The fight, I actually got my tickets to go before the fight was even announced.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're going for the Big Three. Your whole thing was the Big Three championship game.
No,
that day.
I really enjoy going to Vegas. So
who doesn't enjoy going to Vegas? Well,
I'm going to Vegas.
I'm married with kids. I asked my wife and kids, like, hey, do you guys want to go to Vegas? They're like, eh.
See, when I'm married with kids, I hope I'm still going to Vegas.
No, I asked my wife. My wife's like, mid-August, Vegas. I was like, we'll do no kids. She's like, too hot.
It is very hot right now.
It's very hot, which I don't mind. Like, go by the pool. She's like, well, we have a pool.
See, I'm usually
but you can go get sun. We have sun. Okay. I don't. There's a spa. We have a spa down the street.
Yeah, you're either in or you're out with Vegas. I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, you're still in the I don't have kids party age, right? You're a club. Are you going to go clubbing?
I'm not a club person either. But
so what are you going to Vegas for?
In Vegas, I do.
In Vegas, you do?
Yes.
So you're like the sorority girl that says, I only smoke when I drink, right? You only club when you're in Vegas?
Yeah, I guess.
Yes. You club when you're in Vegas. So Vegas, once you get to Vegas,
event.
You're crazy. But outside of Vegas, you're very tame. Will you put wager any money on the fight?
No.
See, my thing about Vegas, what I'm going to struggle with next week is we'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for radio. May pop on this show as well as other shows. There's no sports really to gamble on. Like, I don't know anybody who bets on baseball.
Go to the blackjack table.
Yeah, but that lasts like how many days? I'm going to lose money.
I've spent hours at a blackjack table.
It's just a faster way to lose money.
Or win if you're good at it.
It's like, do you remember the line from Vegas Vacation? Why don't you just give me your money? We'll go out back. I'll kick you in the nuts and we'll call it even, right? Like, that's what it feels like. It's an eventuality. Oh, I'm up. Everybody leaves up.
You're not very good at blackjack.
I am good at blackjack. I know it's not good at blackjack or bad at blackjack.
Yeah, there is. Or you know where you can win a lot of money is 3-card poker.
3-card poker. Mm-hmm. You ever play 52-card pickup?
No.
We can play 52-card pickup as soon as this show ends. That's exactly what we'll do. For Christine Leahy and the entire crew, have a safe weekend. It's one of your last before football starts and your last before the fight and the Big Three next weekend. I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is The Herd.